Today we'll be talking about Dracula 1931, a retro review of one of the first horror films with sound ever to be created. Let's get into it. The dashing, mysterious Count Dracula, after hypnotizing a British soldier, Renfield, into his mindless slave, travels to London and takes up residence in an old castle. Soon, Dracula begins to wreak havoc, sucking the blood of young women and turning them into vampires. When he sets his sight on Mina, the daughter of a prominent doctor, vampire hunter Van Helsing is enlisted to put a stop to the Count's ever-ending bloodlust. Well, happy October, friends, and welcome back to another great review of a retro film, the first Dracula. Matt is not with us this month because he is now a brand new father, and obviously he's taking care of the baby. So you just get me this month, which is fine. He'll be back next month. Let's get into it. So this film is from 1931. We decided to take it all the way back and throw it to one of the early films, one of the first horror films, the horror film, right? The film that kind of brought the horror genre to the forefront. And we thought that this would be kind of a fun October review. Now, this is not necessarily in my wheelhouse, nor is it really in Matt's wheelhouse in terms of decade and era, but we wanted to experience it. And boy, was it very interesting. I personally think that the story and the plot is very thin, is not, there's not a lot going on here. But again, we'll give them a pass because it's from 1931. So, they didn't have a ton of, what I'm saying? Not a lot of filming experience going on back then. So we'll give them a pass for that. I think that the standout performance is Dwight Frye as Renfield. He kind of he's playing it up, right? He's hamming it up for the camera. Him and Bela Lugosi, obviously Bela Lugosi is a legend, is Dracula, right? Is the depiction of Dracula. Whenever you think of Dracula, you're thinking of Bela Lugosi. There are other depictions where Dracula is like a monster, a literal vampire. But like a creature, whereas the costumes that you see, Bela Lugosi is the kind of the picture of Dracula. I think he does a great job, and I think Dwight Frye as Renfield, his servant, those are the standout performances. Everybody else here, I could care less about. They have no personality really, and they're fine. But these guys are the main reason to watch the film. Doing some research on this film, I found out that the American crew would film during the day in the same sets, right? They'd build the sets, and the American crew would film the American version. And then at night, the Spanish crew would come in and film the Spanish version. And they showed some shots of the Spanish film. The disc that we have, the 4K, actually has both versions on it. So maybe we'll go back and watch the Spanish version. But so the Spanish guys would come in and film the Spanish guys. They'd film the Spanish version, and they talk about how they would do things. They were doing things differently than the American version, right? They would move the camera, right? They would take more risks and chances, whereas the American version was just very static, and they wouldn't move the camera very much. Where and the blocking, and by blocking I mean the staging of actors, right? Was very truncated and very separate, whereas the Spanish version was a little bit more sensual, and there was a little bit more, they brought the actors closer together, right? And there was a little bit more romance in that version. And I found that fascinating because we just watched the American version, and I do remember it being kind of very slow and, kind of dragging on. I mean, it was a fun watch because it's like the first horror film. And it's a staple in the genre, and it's Dracula. So it was cool to experience it, but it didn't grip me at all. It didn't move me. It didn't get me invested in any of these characters. But I wonder what the difference is with the Spanish version. I'm so curious to watch that one. So we probably will go ahead and take a look at that in the future. One thing that we didn't realize is when we watched it, we didn't watch it with any music. The standard movie that's on the disc didn't have a soundtrack with it. And then I took it home and I watched the special features, and I realized, there's an option where you can enable the soundtrack. You can enable the music. And I found that I was shocked. I was like, we just watched the entire thing. It's not very long, but it feels long. You know, it's not a very long movie at all, but you feel the runtime here. Just because I think they haven't figured out pacing very well. I just don't think older movies like that are paced very well at all. But it was a different era, right? I'm used to a certain pace of a film that they're just not privy to yet. So I give it a pass on that. Overall, it was fine. These are my final thoughts. It's gonna be a quick review. I don't really see this going on for very longer, just because I don't have my co-host with me, so it's hard to bounce back ideas. So this is a little bit of a rambling. But yeah, standouts, like I said, are Dwight Frye as Renfield. He brought it to life. Every time he was on screen, I was kind of like, oh, okay. You know what I'm saying? You kind of wake up a little bit and you're like, oh, this guy is at least interesting, right? He's got an interesting voice and the makeup, and he seems to be the one that's kind of the only urgency in the film is coming from his character. Everybody else is just kind of like walking around and not either not knowing what they're doing there, or, I mean, there are some, it's just, he felt like he was the one that seemed to really kind of like care, right? The effects and the visual effects and everything that they do in this film, it's fine. It's a little cheesy. It's a little hokey. But obviously, you know, they're doing what they got to do. So they only had a certain amount of technology at the time. So I give it a pass on that. Totally fine. Overall, guys, I think this film, it was an interesting watch, right? It was fun. It was a swing to a different genre, right? And a different time period that I really enjoyed. I don't know how Matt felt about it. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe he'll let us know his thoughts, either in a little short clip. Maybe I'll get that when I see him, or he'll send me something, or, you know, or we'll figure it out. But you know, it was a fun watch. Wasn't my favorite thing on the planet. I definitely want to watch the Spanish version. I think that's the takeaway, is the Spanish version just looked like it had a lot more life and a lot more going on, right? I don't know. It just seemed like it had a lot more style, right? They were pushing the film medium, the art form, right? They were trying to do new things, whereas the Americans were just kind of like, all right, we're going to put it on a tripod and we're going to lock it off. And we're going to do big wide shots, right? We were still in that mindset of it's a play, right? Because you go and see theater, you know, you go and see performances, and they're all blocked in a certain way, and you know, the spacing. It's not designed for a close up like this, right? This is a close up, so you frame the camera differently. They weren't doing any of that really. Maybe I mean they were, not to say they weren't doing any of that. They were. There are close ups in the movie. And some interesting lighting things, but just in terms of camera movement and camera placement, it just seemed very plain and just blah to me. And that's fine. I expected that. It was very interesting watching this with no music. That threw me off. I'm sure if we enabled the music track, which was really strange to me, there's a weird feature on the 4K Blu-ray. It looked pretty. I mean, you know, the 4K upscale was pretty nice, or the restoration, whatever it was pretty decent. But yeah, we watched it without any music, which is kind of a bummer, because I was like, oh, maybe we should have watched it with some music. But anyways, those are my thoughts. You guys can hit the subscribe button, and you can give this a like if you enjoyed this review. Matt and I review a movie every single month. We will be coming to you with a film review, retro review, or pretty much we want to try to stay retro. So anything, I don't know, past the year 2000, even I don't know, it's weird. I'm starting to think like maybe even early 2000s, like anything past 2010 is qualified for me technically now, as we move along and I realize that I'm getting older. And so I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I guess we could do anything like pre-2010, which is weird to say, but I think that's where we're gonna have the cutoff. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining me on this review of Dracula from 1931 with Bela Lugosi, the the GOAT, the great Dracula that we all know. Let me know in the comments down below if you've seen this movie, or what you think, or what your favorite horror movies are, what your favorite Halloween movies are. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys, and take care.